This is Leibniz's cosmological argument, also known as the contingency argument for the existence of God. Imagine walking through the forest and coming across a 3-foot diameter translucent sphere. You would conclude that it has an explanation of its existence. The one thing you wouldn't conclude is that it doesn't, that it just exists inexplicably with no explanation at all. And note that this is not a design argument. This would apply if this were a boulder or a tree or a squirrel or anything like that. This demonstrates a principle called the principle of sufficient reason. For every state of affairs or true proposition, there is an explanation of why it is the way it is and not some other way. It's generally divided into two types of explanations, self-contained and external. Examples of self-contained explanations would be mathematical propositions, abstract objects, and tautologies. For example, consider a right triangle. The explanation for why a right triangle has 3 sides rather than 4 is self-contained. That's what it is to be a triangle. Or consider 2 plus 2 equals 4. It couldn't have been any other way. External explanations, on the other hand, generally apply to events, physical objects, and living creatures. For example, consider why it is that mammals dominate the Earth currently. There's an external explanation to mammals themselves, which is the asteroid that wiped out the dinosaurs. So consider the sphere again. If it requires an explanation, what if we move it to a field? Does that alleviate the need for an explanation? Doesn't seem to. What if we replace the Earth with the sphere? Still seems like it needs an explanation. What if we replace the entire universe with just the sphere? Still seems like it needs an explanation. Or if we consider how old the sphere is, 50 years, 500, 5 million, or even if it were infinitely old, it still seems like it needs an explanation for its existence at all, rather than not existing. So, how about the universe itself? By universe, I don't mean just our physical universe with all the stars and galaxies. Our universe may have been birthed in a quantum vacuum, which would consist of space and time. Or we might just be one of a multiverse. Or there could be colliding membranes that gave birth to our universe. So by universe, I mean all of this together, the whole shebang. Is it self-explanatory, or does it have an external explanation? Well, consider how 2 plus 2 equals 4. It couldn't have been any other way, and it isn't even logically coherent to consider it having been different. But it seems like we can conceive of a different universe having existed. Cosmologists are always talking about how the gravitational constant could have been different, the speed of expansion could have been different, the amount of entropy could have been different, the number of dimensions, the size of space, and so on. So, if this is true, then it seems like the universe needs an external explanation. And of course, since the universe consists of all of space, time, matter, energy, and the laws of nature, then it would have to be outside of them. Let's call it X. So, if X transcends or is above, beyond space, time, matter, energy, and the laws of nature, then it would have to be something spaceless, timeless, non-physical, and supernatural. But then we would have to apply the principle of sufficient reason again to X itself, whatever X is. So is X self-explanatory? Does it have an external explanation? Well, let's go with it has an external explanation. So X explains the universe, X2 explains X, X3 explains X2, and so on to infinity. So does that solve the problem? Not really, because now we don't have an explanation for why the whole infinite chain exists, rather than not. Is it self-explanatory, or does it have an external explanation? If it has an external explanation, it would just lead to more infinity. So at some point we have to terminate the chain of explanations, and we'll call it Z. And Z would have to be, of course, self-explanatory, whatever it is. So Z would have to be self-explanatory plus spaceless, timeless, non-physical, and supernatural. So this obviously doesn't lead to any type of particular God exactly. It's only a foundational argument. It doesn't prove anything intelligent. It only provides fertile soil for deism and theism as opposed to materialism or metaphysical naturalism, the view that the physical universe is all that exists. The primary objection to this argument is to attack the principle of sufficient reason. There may be a third option, facts that have no explanation, even in principle, brute facts. In other words, the universe just exists inexplicably and that's it. Defenders of the principle of sufficient reason would say that we presuppose it in science. There are no widespread violations of it. It's presupposed in philosophical argumentation. If you give a conclusion, people are going to expect you to give the premises that explain how you got to your conclusion. And then why use it and then dump it when it comes to the universe itself? Is this not ad hoc or special pleading? Opponents of the principle of sufficient reason would say that it's not obviously true, it's not a law of nature, our common sense is often wrong, especially when it comes to things like the universe itself. And if a self-explanatory thing explains the universe, then the universe itself is self-explanatory as well. So this entire argument pivots on the principle of sufficient reason, whether it's true or not, and what its scope is. Thank you for watching.